This isn't a yes board.
Okay, the last of our fee increases is FIU. Welcome back, Joe. For those of you new members, this was our student member when I came on the board. Actually, back in his days at the University of Florida. I'm surprised you didn't wear your pin. It would have been helpful, but he's wearing his FIU law pin. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're certainly glad to have Joe here to speak to the board. We figured there was no one who could speak to the Board of Governors more effectively than a former member of the Board of Governors. So I will turn it over to Joe in a few minutes. But let me just say one of the advantages of coming last is that we had an opportunity to listen to a lot of the conversation that's taken place so far. And so I think that what we're proposing really is very attuned to some of the concerns that have been raised. One of which is there's a in this test preparation fee, there is a perfect correlation between students paying the fee and students getting benefit from the fee. So there's no dilution of benefit to the students who are paying the fee. Second, I think it falls well within what the legislature had in mind in the sense that it is a new fee, it's creative, it is not supplemental to anything else. The universities had no other opportunity of doing this prior to this opportunity the legislature has given us, and it is a fee that certainly benefits the university and it benefits the student. The third is that often when you talk about new fees, we worry about differential impact on students. And this fee is one that does have a differential impact because it has a greater impact on the students who have greater financial need. And it's a greater positive impact. So that the students, this is probably almost a unique case of a fee in which a student that has the greater financial need benefits more from this fee than does the student with less financial need. So let me explain that just a little bit. The test preparation fee the test preparation course or program is one that is designed so that students who have to pass an examination in order to be able to perform in their profession that they've trained for are going to be better prepared to pass that test and be able to enter into that profession. Now, a lot and if you approve this fee, then it becomes part of the cost of attendance and it goes into the calculation for the financial aid. It doesn't necessarily completely get paid by financial aid because financial aid calculations are a rather complex calculation that takes many things into consideration. But it's already being paid by financial aid in many private institutions because what they do is they charge a very high tuition and then they provide the preparation course as part of that tuition they're charging. So all of those students are already paying for it and it's already in the financial aid calculations for all those students. So what we're asking for is to allow us to offer this same opportunity for our students and have it within the financial aid calculation so that our students can benefit from that. And I think it's important to point out that this is not a response to a particular crisis that we're seeing because we're very proud to say that every graduating class since our new law school opened has had a pass rate on the bar that's higher than the state average. So, but it is certainly an improvement. It makes the university better, and I think it meets all those criteria. But I would certainly now want to turn over to former Governor Goldberg to express the student's perspective.
Has Governor Goldberg taken that bar yet?
I have not. I have not.
On the pass rate issue.
I'll be taking it this May. Well, thank you very much for having me. It is great to be back. This is my first time back, and I guess it's been Chair Parker now and I were talking. It's been about 5 years, so thank you for welcoming me back. And you guys are doing a lot of the same work we were doing very diligently. The students at the law school support this immensely. for four really basic reasons, and the provost spoke about most of those reasons, but just to reiterate, the first is that this becomes part of the financial aid package. Our students, 97% of our students take a bar prep course. So being able to pay for this through your financial aid, or having the ability to use the financial aid to pay for it, would be a major benefit to the students. Multiple students don't qualify for bar loans. Just to give you an idea of test preparation courses right now, how much they run. You're looking at about $3,200 for one of the leading test prep courses. There's two right now out in the industry that are the leading test preparation in terms of bar prep courses in the industry, and then another $1,500 for your bar application fees. So you're looking at about $5,000 right when you're ready to take the bar, which is after you've spent all your money on law school. The second part of that is that this would allow the test preparation companies to subsidize a lot of the cost. Because if we're coming in and we're going to say that X amount of students each year are going to take your course, they're going to be able to lower the cost for our students. So the students are going to see a major decrease in the price. In preliminary discussions, there's been numbers thrown out as high as $900 savings per student for this type of service. The third thing, which I think differs with respect to this fee, that other fees that have come before you, is that the school keeps nothing of this. This is directly to benefit the students. This goes directly back to the students to make sure that they have the ability to take the course that they need to pass the bar. And then finally is the ability for those students who do not take the Florida bar, there is the opt-out provision to be able to do so if you are not taking the Florida bar. So for those four reasons, we submit that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions? Governor Franklin.
So it looks like we're going to create a consortium, take that to the marketplace, get to lower the amount that it might cost per student to take a test prep course for a licensure. But the amount of money that you have in the proposal, is that going to be adequate enough to fulfill that need to be able to take the course? So the amount of money that you're asking for to implement as a new fee, okay, you're going to create this consortium of the different professional schools that have to take a state licensure exam to be licensed. Once you take that to the private sector, they're going to come back to you with, I guess, a 10% or whatever amount, more than that possibly, or hopefully, decrease in the amount of money it's going to cost for a FIU student to become a licensed nurse, let's just say, in the state of Florida. Is this amount of money going to be adequate enough or sufficient enough to meet the need in reference to the cost that you're going to have in savings, and what's still going to be able to provide the service to get the service for the student?
The amount that we put in there was based on the preliminary discussions, given the number of students that we have in each of our graduating classes with the test preparation fee companies, so that we're reasonably confident that that will be the case. Obviously, we couldn't enter into any agreement with them until we knew that the Board of Governors had approved this, and then we could move forward with implementing that.
Okay, thank you. And he also,
Please, Franklin.
And he also talked about financial aid packaging in reference to the benefit of being able to make this, I guess, in reference to be enrolled as a student within one of these professional degree programs. But when you, I guess, do your financial aid packaging, I guess, how does that work exactly? I know some places where if you have a federal Pell Grant, just in general, you'll still get the funds sent to you or sent into your bank account or sent to you via check where you have left over for housing or books or what have you. And so my question is, I guess the statement in reference to including this in reference to enrollment, how does that increase the funding for need-based aid or any type of aid for a student?
So the board had the workshop last month on financial aid, and I certainly don't profess to be a financial aid expert because it's very complicated. They gave you just two possible shots on slides of what they had gone through and calculated. And basically what the financial aid is based on is how much is the, depending on whether it's a family for a dependent student or the individual, if it's an independent individual, able to afford based on set federal calculations. And then on the other side of the ledger is what's the total cost of attendance, which includes the tuition and fees, and it includes housing and living expenses. So from that calculation, that's why I said it's not as though it's a strict quid pro quo that the financial aid fee would cover all of it, because each individual student will be a different, unique situation as they go through that financial aid calculation, but it will be able to be put into the cost of attendance side of the equation, which it cannot be unless it becomes a required fee by the Board of Governors.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Provost, I have a question, and it's more technical in nature, and obviously staff just brought it to me. I didn't pick it up myself. The fee is only going to be charged in the last semester? Is that correct?
We would be able to charge it in the last year. We would spread it out so that it doesn't hit all on one semester's billing, so that we can have a course that is attached to that fee that begins in the first semester of the third year, by which time the students that are going to decide to move on to a different profession will have already made that decision. So we wouldn't be, it's only the students that are going to be graduating that would actually be paying the fee. But we've been looking at ways of having it paid over 2 semesters.
It creates a bit of a challenge, and I just want to draw your attention to it. It may be, if this fee moves forward, something that's got to be figured out. Statutorily, the fee cannot be more than 10% of the credit hour fee. And I remember when I took Barbary 25 years ago, it was a couple $1,000s. So,
well, we tried to be very transparent from the very beginning with our conversations with the board staff, and what we put in the documentation that you see, which we said was that it is not going to be more than 10%. It's going to be less than 10% of the program tuition.
So, what you said,
and that's conversation. I think we had that very up front to make sure, because obviously it is much more than the tuition for a 1-credit course. There's no question about that.
No, it's not the 1-credit course.
But we looked at it in terms of the program tuition, and that's the discussion we had.
But when you talk about the program, you're talking about the entire 3-year program if it's a law school.
Correct.
Yeah, and
because
we're going to have to figure out how that works.
And it would only apply to students that have completed the entire 3-year program. So if a student, as I said, changes their desires of being a lawyer in the 2nd year or something, it would not apply to them at all.
Again, I'm not arguing the merits. I'm just saying, technically, this may present a challenge. I'm not sure if that 10% number, we can go back the prior 2 years and average that into the program cost, or if just by statute, not by us, if just by statute we may be limited to 10% of that credit hour cost. Now, I don't know what you charge for law school, so I don't know what 10% is of that number.
But it would not make it, we would not have gotten this far had we not had assurances that it was appropriate on a technical basis.
Okay, and those assurances came from your counsel?
They came from conversations with board staff as well.
Okay. I guess we'll have to see.
We will verify that before I'm not saying we would verify what you just said, but we'll have that conversation before the full board is asked to take this one up.
Yeah,
again,
no, I mean, clearly we understand that the legislation is very clear. It's 10% of the tuition. But it did not say 10% of the per credit hour tuition, and said 10% of the tuition. And when we had the conversation to begin this, because $3,000 is not even going to work in terms of 10% of 1 year's worth of tuition. It's the program tuition, and the only students that would be subject to it are the ones who are completed the program. So those are the criteria. And again, obviously, if it's determined that this initial analysis doesn't fit, though, it is not possible within the wording of the statute, then we won't do it.
Okay, I just didn't know if you had explored that beyond, and clearly you've had the conversation, but I'm now getting some discomfort from staff as to the clarity of it.
Yeah.
Yes, good question.
Governor Beard.
Could you, is the net cost to the student with the fee and the tuition, because of your negotiating ability, more or less than it is now? For the course?
Well, for the students who are currently financially able to pay to take the test preparation course, the net cost will decrease. The students who currently do not feel they have the financial resources to pay for the course without, just from their own, without having any subsidized loans or any of the other sorts of financial aid that students have access to, they're not paying anything for it, but they're not getting any benefit either.
So it's a financial deal. It's a financial deal.
Yeah, it's a financing transaction. Other questions? Are you focused right now, and I apologize, I should know this, I guess. Are you focused on the law school right now, or will we be seeing a Becker CPA course and not that that was a commercial for Becker, I just used to teach it. Are you expecting this to expand amongst other colleges, or is this basically, we've got a great law school, we want to keep our pass rates up, we want to...
I mean, right now, all the impetus for it has been from the law school. What we're asking the board to approve is the test preparation fee concept, and we point out here that the law school is the one that, and it's certainly the one that pushes the 10% limit the most, but there are the NCLEX preparations, there's the CPA preparation that might be, again, this really comes out of looking at what students are currently doing and what they, and if there is a disproportionate impact on our poorer students not being able to take advantage of this, and it has an effect on their pass rate. So we have not done those analyses for the other fees. We would do those analyses before we would move forward for those fees, but the way we're presenting it to you at least, is that it would be as in the general category without coming back every time and say, for instance, we did look at the NCLEX fee, and that's like between $300 and $500, so it's a fairly small fee over the course of a program.
Will you then, and I know I'm getting in the weeds, but this is more for the future than the present, will you then have to almost run a spreadsheet for every student? If FIU comes back next year and says, here's a 5% fee we want to charge, will you just exempt the law students? Will you just exempt them in their 30? Because we've got a 10% cap on all these new category of fees. Are you literally going to have to run a different spreadsheet for each student and say, well, he's in the law course and he's paying this much. Well, this is the CPA course, so they're paying this much in their test prep fee, and here's the nursing course. That seems to me to be an extraordinary burden. I know there's computers, but how will you, have you thought about the management side of that?
Frankly, we have not thought about the management side of that because we have not thought about other, right now we've only focused on this fee. It is a very defined professional program. Again, it would, if it's really of a benefit to our students, given the technology at hand, we're certainly willing to invest the effort to make sure that we follow the law, track the students as necessary, and meet what their needs are. So right now it's not an issue, but if a similar situation arose where we went through the analysis and came to the same conclusion that it really would be a significant benefit to our students, we'd be more than glad to put the resources that would be required to do the technological tracking.
Yeah, it just seems like that's going to create, particularly if you expand to the CPAs and the nurses, you're going to be exempting people from these fees and those fees. And ought to be interesting. So it sounds like
it's a legitimate point, and it's one which would have to factor into the equation going forward relative to cost and benefit for the students.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a few technical things to sort out if this moves forward. Are there other questions, or is there a motion? It's one or the other. Got a lot of guys wanting to do market rate out there. We don't have time for another coffee break.
Long day.
I move to approve the test preparation fee for Florida International University.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Governor Root. Any additional comments? Seeing none, Mikey, will you call the roll?
I will. All right. I don't believe Ms. Duncan is on the line, but we'll try again anyway. Ms. Duncan? No. All right. Mr. Franklin?
4.
Okay. Mr. Sandy's not. Dr. Marshall?
4.
Okay. Mr. Rood?
4.
Mr. Tripp?
4.
Okay. Mr. Beard?
4.
Mr. Chair, you have a
You have the second unanimous vote of the day, gentlemen. Congratulations.
100% pass rate.
Joe, great to see you.
Good to see you. Thank
Always
you
a
very
pleasure.
much. Wish you luck on the bar in July.
We'll say your prayer. So you're not in this in time to take the Barbary course, right?
No, I've already paid my $3,200.
Good for you. Good for you. Study hard. Thank you, Provost.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Governor Tripp, we haven't heard from you all day.
I would like to suggest to the chair, if you would be amenable, that we have reviewed ourselves each of these market tuition proposals. They were reasonable. They were all vetted. We spend a lot of time, as you know, in our committee determining that we wanted to go forward with this. And I would like to propose that that I be allowed to make a motion that we approve all of these proposals without them being presented unless any other board member has a reason to bring them up, because I don't think it's going to change anything that we've already agreed to do. And if you would be amenable and there'd be a second, we could move this rather quickly.
It's only my fear of disappointing those who are here to present that would prevent me from accepting that. So,
Could I second for discussion?
Governor Root.
I'll second the comment. We have spent a lot of time on this, and I like it. My concern is not so much disappointing those that are here to speak, but having one conversation that somebody may be looking at in order to better understand this. But I don't need to understand it anymore. It's just, if there's, and there are really not a lot of people here, but there may be somebody somewhere that is watching this that cares.
Mr. Chair?
We all care.
Mr. Chair, perhaps some of each. Maybe just an overview of what those, not each, but what the process has brought forward this first time. Because again, this is new as well, based on the board's approval of the recent regulation. So perhaps just a quick overview of what it is that's being proposed by each of the universities in terms of the request, but then also an affirmation again of the very hard work that's gone into not only the creation of, but the passage of the regulation, the look at the nation, the look at Florida, and the great work that has been done on the part of the universities who are coming forward with these requests. Just to satisfy that issue is probably a good idea, and nobody's been closer to it than the chairman, so it's probably a good idea.
Well, let me do this. Let me ask those presenters, do you think if you tried you could shorten it up to just a few minutes of overview, because it seems like you don't want to talk past the sale. So let's do that. Let's just shorten it up to a few minutes of overview. You all have been...
Our motion.
No, he didn't.
To move
Oh,
this
yeah,
block.
let me just, yeah. If, we'll vote on the motion to do it as a block, which will be withdrawn in a moment, I trust. But what I would want to say before we, well, let's go ahead and do that. You're withdrawing, and you're withdrawing, second, okay. That motion is withdrawn, thank you. Now, as you come up, first, a general overview. Provosts, Joe from UF, extraordinary work in getting to this point on market rate. It was a long summer. We spent a lot of time on this process. University provosts and teams worked very closely. I think we've made some tremendous progress here, and frankly, all of the requests that came in, at least from my perspective, were very reasonable, very well thought out, very well documented, and I just appreciate it a lot. So before we move forward, Joe, did you want to say anything? I mean, you were instrumental in this.
Well, I will just say a few words for the record about what market rate tuition is, if you would like me to do so.
Sure.
As I understand it, in the last legislative session, the legislature authorized the Board of Governors to consider and approve market rate tuition requests from the universities. The board undertook a discussion of the process, ultimately decided that universities would be permitted to bring forward at this time up to 5 proposals during this first cycle. A number of universities have done so. Market rate tuition, upon approval of the Board of Governors, has really 2 effects. One is that it allows universities to set the charge for tuition for graduate and professional programs that are offered mostly through distance education and continuing education mechanisms to meet market forces. And this, for the first time, actually allows the universities to make excess revenue on some of these programs. Previously, by statute, they were limited simply to recovering costs. This has 2 very beneficial effects for the universities. Number one, it does allow us to use successful programs to bring in revenue to help underwrite the other operations of the university, which is sorely needed in these days. And for a second thing, it does relieve ongoing discussions with auditors over exactly what constitutes costs. And this sounds like a small matter, but it has been a major headache for several universities. So I think the universities are very appreciative of the board's willingness to continue these market rate, these market rate requests. And I think that this will be the beginning of a really burgeoning set of offerings through distance and continuing education that will bring to people who are place-bound both in Florida and outside of Florida the opportunity to pursue graduate and professional degrees that they might not otherwise be able to do.
Great. Joe, again, thanks for that brief summary and your work through this process. You've been a champion for us here. Again, those of you who are here to present, please just give us a general overview of what you did, but I think if you've got full-blown presentations, they're probably not necessary at this point. We have all spent many hours in these files, and you all were very reasonable and well documented in your presentations. So let's start with Florida International University.
We will try to set the standard of being brief. Let me say it gives me an opportunity, though, to give evidence to the board of the incredible efforts at FIU in terms of academic efficiency as well as administrative efficiency, in that I will introduce to make the presentation Joyce Elam. She's the Executive Dean of our College of Business Administration, but she also is the Dean of our University College that deals with all of the all the continuing education programs. So you have with you 2 deans in one.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, governors. It is a real privilege for me to be here to present, but I will be very brief. We are bringing forward to you 4 programs. One of them we're going to pull back. So 4, and these are 4 of our most popular programs: our Masters in International Business, our MBA program in its various delivery formats, our Masters of Accounting program, and a brand new program, Masters in Global Governance. These programs really represent what we do best at FIU. They all speak to our community needs, and they speak to our international mission.
Can you just give us a brief 2 or 3 minutes on, as you assess the field, how you looked at the competition and how you set about setting your pricing? Because I think, and again, everyone was very reasonable in the process, but I think it might be helpful for us to just get a sense of that, of how you chose your price and your fees and your tuition.
We primarily looked at other SUSs to get the prices. It was surprising how close that we were, because many of these programs already were being operated under the continuing education regulation. And in our case, we also looked at the University of Miami, since that is our closest competitor.
Interesting, thank you. Any questions for the 4 programs? And for the record, you are pulling back the Master of Public Health, correct? That's correct. Okay, so FIU is advancing the Master of International Business, Global Governance, Accounting program, and their MBA. Is there a motion with regard to the 4 programs?
So moved.
There's a motion to accept the market rate tuition proposal for International Business, Global Governance, Accounting program, and Business Administration. It has been seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And opposed? Carries. Thank you. Drive home safely. Florida State University.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Florida State University's Board of Trustees is forwarding 5 market rate proposals, 3 in business and the online MBA, the Management Information Systems, and the Management Risk Management Insurance programs. They're also forwarding 1 in Library and Information Studies and 1 in Social Work. All are currently online. In answer to your question of how we set the fees, what we did is we looked at our existing cost structure to make sure that we were in fact going to be covering the cost at the new market rate. Then we looked at the competition out there, and we made sure that we were below the median in all cases.
Thank you. Questions for Florida State University? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the market rate tuition proposal for Master of the Social Work, Library and Information Systems, Management with a major in Risk Management and Insurance, Management of Information Systems, and Business Administration? So moved. So motion, is there a second?
Second.
Has been seconded. Any additional discussion?
Just one comment. It's amazing how much tuition is charged for some of these programs. I mean, that's what has just been totally shocking to me, and we're still a great deal.
Yeah, you mean in other places?
In other places,
yeah,
yes. In the market study, in the
I
comparison.
was actually stunned by that, too. It's been a long time since I was in law school. Okay. All in favor, then, of the motion to approve all of the Florida State offerings, please say aye. Aye. And opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Be safe. University of Florida.
Thank you. The University of Florida submits for board consideration 5 programs. The first is Outreach Engineering Management Program. The second is the Masters of Business Administration Program, again offered in multiple formats like one of the other universities talked about. The third one is the Pharmaceutical Sciences Masters of Science Program for working professionals. The fourth is the Pharmaceutical Sciences Clinical Doctorate Program for working professionals, known colloquially as the Working Professional PharmD program in the state. And the fifth one is the Doctor of Audiology for working professionals. All of the programs are currently priced basically at cost recovery, and what we are committing to the board is that we will price these at market forces, but in no case will we increase at more than the 15% statutory rate for the future.
Joe, on the Doctor of Audiology, is there only one other program in the country?
Yes, and the reason for that is that if you go back about 15 years, in the United States, the standard for audiologists was a master's degree. The profession decided to upgrade to a doctorate. At that time, the University of Florida actually anticipated that development and built quickly a distance program and basically captured the national market. Most of the people who either need to convert to upgrade their credential or want to upgrade the credential nationally have done so by now. And as is mentioned in the proposal, there is a domestic market that is shrinking to zero, but they are recruiting internationally now, and we hope to continue a viable program that way.
Yeah, that was an interesting piece of your proposal. Thank you. Is there a motion with regard to the University of Florida and their requests for their 5 programs? Is a motion, is there a second? And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Joe. University of Central Florida.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
The University of Central Florida seeks approval to offer market rate tuition at 3 programs: our Master of Science in Management, our MBA also in multiple formats, our Master of Science in Real Estate. These programs are all directed towards working professionals. They're offered all by our College of Business Administration, and our Dean, Tom Kean, is here, should there be any questions. These are different from our full-time day programs in that they are offered in cohort fashion, usually 16 to 20-month programs. They are offered at convenient times and in convenient locations, Tuesday and Thursday evening, Friday and Saturday during the day, that sort of thing. Again, they are geared towards working professionals. The fees are based on a combination of our costs and comparisons with our competitors. They're consistent with our mission to basically be partners with our community. So if there are any questions?
Thanks. Tom, anything to add?
No.
There you go. Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and a second to adopt the programs for the University of Central Florida. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice getting the hard work done.
There you go. Before we conclude, first I just want to say an incredible thanks to Tim and staff who have just knocked it out on this material, the vetting, the review, the rulemaking. This has been quite a process. It's not done yet. I will say, unless the committee tells me otherwise, I am likely to recommend to Chair Parker that we may want to consider these issues at a face-to-face meeting instead of the telephonic meeting next week. I think there's a lot of work to be done. We had a lot of close votes. We had a lot of 3-3s which failed, and we may be better served in an in-face meeting. So to the extent that that doesn't prejudice any of the universities who are making plans, if they need to know it's a yes or a no immediately, we should probably know that, because my thought is if we go through this process on a telephone conference call with reporters putting us on hold and hearing their music and all of the things that happen on those calls, this will be a very, very difficult conversation for us next week. So unless someone here objects, I'm asking what's left of the universities out there to let me know if it would create a great hardship to wait on these until our March meeting.
Which is March
23rd and 24th.
Say again.
23rd and 24th.
March 23rd and 24th. That will be my suggestion to Chair Parker. If someone finds that it's a hardship, please let me know or let her know. Governor Rood.
I don't know if there's anything that is time sensitive, but it would seem to me that there are probably 2 controversial issues that are going to take some discussion, the ones that we left to the full board. And I don't know if there's any advantage to having a board on the ones that aren't controversial so that we can move ahead on those. Just a thought.
Okay. Well, I will share those comments with Chair Parker as well. I will leave it to her extraordinary discretion as to what she chooses to do there. Other than that, thanks for the hard work. The task force that wrote the regs, wrote the rules. This has been quite a process. It was something new. It was a little more painful than perhaps it needed to be, but hopefully we've sent at least the message that we're taking this seriously. We understand the obligation, and our universities are coming up with interesting proposals to make student life better. Anything else?
Thank your members for keeping quorum.
Yes, and I do thank all of you for keeping quorum so we could finish the day. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned.